everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for I Don't Want to Kill You by Dan Wells. This is the third book in his John Cleaver series. This is like a horror thriller kind of series. I would say leaning more towards thriller with some horror elements, with some supernatural stuff as well. And this is a series I've really enjoyed so far. I read the first book, I Am Not a Serial Killer, I think about 2.5 years ago-ish, maybe a little under that. It's been a little while, or maybe a year, 1.5 years ago. I can't remember. It's been a while anyway. And but I really liked that book. And then a few months ago, when I started doing audiobooks through my library, I checked out the second book, which is called Mr. Monster, and loved that as well. And so I was wanting to check out the third book sometime here soon, because I did absolutely love those first two books. And I'm happy to say 3 for 3. I loved this one as well. In fact, this one may be my favorite of the trilogy, I think. Although it's kind of a trilogy, kind of not, because it was originally a trilogy, but then he also wrote another 3 books on top of this. So last book of the original John Cleaver trilogy, but the third book of the overall 6-book series, I guess. And yeah, I really liked this book. I absolutely loved it, beginning to end, just like the second book when I listened to that a few months ago, like super into it all the way through, just had a blast with it. So things that I liked about this book, I think this book, generally everything good that I have to say about the first 2 books is also generally applicable here. This series follows in a first-person perspective from the perspective of a character named John Cleaver, who is a teenager who I forget exactly what his thing going on is. I can't remember if he's like a sociopath or psychopath. I can't remember exactly, but he kind of has that mentality that is like pretty common in like serial killers and things of that nature. So he is very interested in serial killers and all of these kinds of things, kind of thinks in that kind of similar way, doesn't really relate to people's emotions in the way that a neurotypical type person would, and those kinds of things. And so he is an extremely interesting character to read from the perspective from, because he has a very, different perspective on things from the way that most people would view things. So he's super interesting to see it from, and the premise of the series in general, and, for each of these books, is basically serial killings happen in his small town, and he basically gets really into it because he enjoys studying and learning about serial killers, and being someone who kind of has similar tendencies himself, uses that plus his general knowledge of serial killers in order to basically figure out what's happening, try to track down who is doing it and why, trying to basically like profile them and figure out how to stop them. And that's basically the premise of each one of these books so far. And so very similar situation here. Killings start happening in his town, and he decides that he is going to try and stop them. And by this point in the series, it has become clear that there is something a little bit deeper going on. There are these supernatural beings which are carrying out these killings, and so as he has now gone through 2 books worth of this, he kind of knows how to deal with this, but he has to be careful about telling other people about it, because like who else is going to believe that there are literal like demon creatures out and about killing people? So really interesting way that it kind of plays on the kind of formula of the series, and it does so in a little bit of a different way. Because you have that aspect to it, and then on top of that, you also have John himself. I think this is the book where it really humanizes him the most, because he starts to have these more kind of typical experiences of a teenager, gets involved in relationships, and kind of starting to make him feel more like, start to kind of relate to people a little bit better and things of that nature, which I really like. So it's kind of taking the original formula and doing something a little different with it. And on top of that, I really like the way that John himself is done in this book. He has a fantastic arc across this trilogy, but especially in this book, like this is, I think, the real fulfillment of the arc that this entire trilogy has been building towards. And you know, in the first couple books, you know, he's been able to be involved in stopping these killings, and so even though he knows things about them that most other people don't, he is kind of seen as like this person who is able to save people and able to you know, do these good things and all of this stuff. But then this book kind of deals with kind of the other side of that, of kind of struggling with that and trying to kind of figure out who he really is, trying to figure out, like, is he really this hero and all of this stuff, which is really interesting. I really enjoyed that aspect of this book, and just his arc in general throughout this book is just fantastically done. And like I said, really follows through nicely on the first two books, because it feels like his character arc has been building across this series, and this one, it really kind of comes to a head in some ways, I think. On top of that, the actual plot of this book, which, you know, this is kind of like a murder mystery kind of thing, where he's, you know, trying to track down the killer, figuring out where their mindset's at, why they are doing things the way they're doing them, all these kinds of things. And that is, as usual, just really, really interesting. I loved kind of getting to see, you know, especially a situation like this through the eyes of a character like John Cleaver. I think is just really interesting, where he, you know, is able to put himself into that mindset without being someone who would actually, you know, he is able to stop himself from basically going and doing these kinds of things, which is a really interesting dynamic for him, and is really well done in this instance as well. And of course, you know, now that he knows certain things about like these supernatural beings that are performing these killings, he is able to use the knowledge that he has gained across the last two books in order to basically implement that into his own investigation and learn things in a way that gives him more of an advantage, I guess, which is really interesting. I really liked all the other characters as well. You've got his mom, you've got this girl who kind of becomes his girlfriend in this book. You've got several other characters, police characters, things like that. They're all done very, very well. And I really enjoyed the relationships and the dynamics that he had between them that really go, I think, in a very emotionally fulfilling direction by the end. I think the ending of this book is by far the most emotionally evocative ending of the trilogy, which, I mean, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, the ending of this book is phenomenal, like perfect, amazing, just incredible ending. But I think that it really works with the characters, because you really kind of across this trilogy and in this book as well get a really connected to the characters. And so seeing the way things go towards the end of this book, it really hits home, which is something I really enjoyed about it as well. And the ending also in general was just, there is some crazy stuff that happens towards the end of this book, as far as, you know, him figuring things out about the killer, what the killer is actually trying to do. All of this stuff is super interesting and just done super well. Some of the most tense and thrilling and emotional moments of this entire trilogy happen at the end of this book. It's just super well done. This book also, I think more so than the other two books, was also really interesting thematically as well. You have themes of things like love and relationships and, you know, kind of the idea of like the ends justify the means kind of thing. Like, how far would you be willing to push yourself to do something bad in order to get to what might be considered a noble outcome, things like that. Kind of the themes of like heroism and him kind of trying to deal with his own way of how he views himself in all of this and all these kinds of things. Just a lot of really interesting stuff thematically going on in this book as well, that I think is both a little bit deeper and a little bit more interesting than what thematically was going on in the first two books. So that also is really well done. And yeah, overall, I just really liked this book. There was nothing in this book that I didn't enjoy. There wasn't a moment in it that I felt like was wasted or unnecessary. Like, everything about this book just builds and builds in such a way that is incredibly satisfying by the end, incredibly exciting, just constantly interesting, always wondering what's going to happen next. Just all of those kinds of things. I loved this book. Like I said, it's probably my favorite of the series so far, and to be completely honest with you, I am having to resist the urge to go and start book 4 like tomorrow, because that is how much I want to, like how excited I am about this book and continuing this series at this point. If the last 3 books keep up the way that these first 3 have, this could very well end up being one of my absolute top series of all time, because I so far have adored all 3 of these books. So as far as a rating out of 10, probably quite unsurprisingly, this is getting a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, extremely entertaining, a lot of good kind of humor parts in here as well, some kind of like darker humor kind of stuff. Really interesting perspective from John as usual. Really interesting themes, great plot that just had me on the edge of my seat at pretty much all times. Like, just an amazing book, and I cannot wait, like I said, to continue this series. I'm gonna have to try real hard to resist just picking up book 4 straight away, but I am definitely planning to finish this series sometime next year, so very excited for that. So that's pretty much all I got for you. Let me know in the comments if you have read I Don't Want to Kill You, what you thought of it, if you liked it, if you didn't, whatever. If you've read other books in the series, what you thought of those, or if you happen to have read the entire series, how does this book compare to the rest of them? I'm excited to check out the rest of them, because especially the ending of this book really does a good job of, you know, wrapping up this part of the story, but also providing a very interesting setup for what's to come. So I'm really excited to continue. So that's pretty much it for this one. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.